So the loud noise you hear in the background, this recording is rain, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Oh, great.
What do you mean, Kim? I mean, that's unacceptable.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with
Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study human health, disease, and evolution.
I'm Ross Barnett. Cut this bit out, but yeah. Start again. I'm Dr. Ross Barnett with a background in studying Pleistocene extinctions.
And today we're reviewing a movie called Trog from 1970, starring Joan Crawford. I believe this is Joan Crawford's last movie, and also her possibly biggest regret of all the movies she did. Who wants to summarize this one?
So there's these three cavers, and they're exploring caves, and they're trying to find caves that no one had been in before. And they're pretty they don't really have very many health and safety standards, but so they go into the cave, and it's this big, large cave, and then there's this pool of water, and the one guy takes what you can assume is a battery-powered flashlight that's not waterproof into the water, and which is cold.
But
They
he
make a
strips
note
down
of saying
first.
that it's cold. Oh yes, he strips down to
You're
his tidy
missing that.
whities. Yes. So he goes down to his tidy whities, and then he goes into the freezing cold water, which they were surprised to find it so cold. And then he swims to the back and finds another cave portion. And then there he gets attacked by a beast. And then his friend hears him being attacked and runs towards that, which if my friend went deep into a cave and then all I heard was grunting and him screaming for help, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Just start sealing everything off. But and then anyway, so then the guy goes and he sees the thing killing his friend, and so he runs out and he tells the story of what he saw down there. And so what he says that he saw is this ape humanoid type thing that killed his friend. And then so of course what everybody always does is calls in an anthropologist, who is Joan Crawford. And she's a very famous anthropologist in this, what can presumed is a small town, England. And she has a research center there. And so she goes caving to see what this is and takes a picture, and she just happens to put her camera into this dark hole and then happens to get a perfect picture of the animal, the creature. And based on the picture, she decides that it is a troglodyte, which I'm not sure what the definition of that is in this movie. We can talk about that in a minute. And that it is surely the missing link between ape and man, and it needs to be studied. And so they go in and they try and, capture the beast, which ends up in another person being killed by him. And then because he's so annoyed that everybody's coming to his cave and bugging him, he then runs out of the cave to go and attack more things and break more stuff. And then he gets captured, and then he gets brought into the lab, the anthropologist lab, where she studies him. And then there's this fight, like the main issue, besides trying to study and understand human behavior through this creature, is that there's this one dude in the village who just has his hate on for it. Like, he just hates the researcher. He hates that she's female. He hates that she's a scientist. He hates this beast monster. He thinks it's going to kill everybody, which, to be fair, it's already killed 2 people. But even with it in a cage and locked up, he still just has this hate on. He thinks that it's causing a mockery of his town. So he wants the police to get involved, and he eventually gets it brought to court, but I'm skipping ahead. Anyway, so he, the scientist trains, is doing experiments on this trog, which they call troglodyte, doing experiments on it, teaching it to identify different colors, teaching it to play with a doll, teaching it to play fetch or toss with a ball, which then it kills a dog, which I did not appreciate. That just goes too far in a movie.
Yeah, killing people, fine, but dogs, no way.
You shouldn't kill it, no. And still, the anthropologist, I understand I wouldn't want to kill him either, But she still seems like, no, he's gentle, he's lovely. Yes, he's killed 4 people and a dog, but that's, not here or there. And he's quite gentle to her and her daughter, because they treat him gently. And then, oh God, I just watched it and I said I would describe it, and now I'm already forgetting. Oh,
that's
then that's when they go
brings him
to
to
court.
court.
Yes, so that's what brings him to court, because then it's like, okay, this really is a menace. It's killed the dog, it's gone too far. And so
Another court case prove evolution is real.
Yep, and she has to bring in other scientists from around the world to say, yes, this is important. Yes, understanding human behavior. Yes, this creature that she says is 10 million years old and has obviously come from the gorilla, the ape, and the baboon after they started to walk, our ancestors, after they started to walk on 2 legs before it became the Neanderthal man. And that line made my head explode. And so finally the judge decides that it seems like, since all these scientists agree, and she's also taught Trog to talk a bit, that it is worth saving his life for the scientific questions that we could answer with him. And at no point in time is it brought up that it's also just a living creature and maybe shouldn't be murdered for whatever reason. That's never really even brought up. It's just all for science. Then, so
the 70s were a wild time. You could just murder a dog in a movie.
Ugh, terrible. So Joan Crawford wins a court case, so the Trog is allowed to live, and then the angry man decides that he is going to show everybody once and for all how vicious this animal is. So he goes and knocks out the guard. Then he goes into and unlocks a cage and then viciously throws the lock at Trog. And then he saunters slowly out of the research center and then is surprised that he is the first person that Trog attacks and kills. And Trog goes on a rampage and kills a grocer and a butcher. And I found it really interesting how the butcher, like, it was supposed to be this horror movie that this human got hung up like meat in the butcher shop around all of the meat that humans hang up regularly, right? And
subtext.
Yes. And he goes to a park and kidnaps a little girl that looks like the doll that Joan Crawford had given him. So he doesn't kill the little girl because it's his doll, right? And so he carries her gently to the cave, and he brings her into the cave with him because I think he's just going back to his life and he's going to take this girl with him. And then Joan Crawford has to go into the cave and ask nicely for the girl back. Luckily, she gets the girl back, and then police and stuff swarm the cave, and Trog gets impaled on is it stalagmite that comes up from the ground, or stalactite?
Mites go up, tights go down.
Stalagmite. So he gets impaled on a stalagmite, which at the beginning I was like, those look really sharp. Someone's gonna die on those because they're not that sharp in real life usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it ends really abruptly.
It ends very abruptly. I think one of my favorite parts was when, in his rampage, when he just slowly pushes a car over, like a Mr. Bean car, and as soon as it tips, it just bursts into flame. So funny.
Well, those things are mostly made of wood, so, highly flammable. Oh, God, what a film.
It's tonally pretty weird because, like, all the posters and stuff make it look like it's a horror movie, and I guess it is, but, like, for, like, at least 3/4 of the movie, it's Joan Crawford trying to prove that this thing is, like, a sensitive creature, like, treating it like a child and playing with it, with toys with it. And in the meantime, or like at the beginning, at the end, you have these sequences where he's just brutally murdering people for, like, innocent people for no reason.
With no hesitation.
And in that last scene, he goes on a rampage and murders those shopkeepers, and then presumably there was a guy in that car that burst into flames, and I didn't see him get out, right? Did he get out before he flipped it over?
No.
So he's just murdering people in the most brutal way possible, hanging them on meat hooks and burning them alive. And then he stumbles into a playground where it's just full of kids, and some of them are playing soccer. So he sees the ball, which they'd been playing with earlier, and he goes, "Oh, I want to play with his ball." And then the kids and their mothers are terrified. And as the audience, I know we're supposed to feel like, oh no, he's just misunderstood. He just wants to play with the ball. But we just watched him brutally murder 4 people. So, of course,
Yeah.
we can't let him go play ball with the children. Like, I don't understand how we're expected to feel. Is he a monster or is he a sensitive creature? I don't know.
He's definitely a monster.
It was
He's killed
confusing.
like half a dozen people and a dog. Definitely a monster.
Yeah. Yeah. And only one of those people deserved it.
Okay, so what's scientifically wrong with this movie?
Uh, well, there's no such thing as troglodyte. The only scientific troglodytes would be that the scientific name for chimpanzee is pan-troglodytes. So I'm guessing that's where it comes from, is this idea that troglodyte means ape.
Yeah, troglodyte just means cave dweller.
And then she said 10 million years ago from the ancestors, the gorilla, the ape, and the baboon.
Tied into that, you missed over the part where they performed an operation on him to make him speak by inserting a microtransmitter, and then suddenly we were able to see inside his mind back to the time of the dinosaurs, where we had like a really long,
I was saving
like
the
a
dinosaur
5 minute,
part.
a 5 minute
I
long
know, it's so long.
insight into Trog's dinosaur imagination. Well, imagine it was him remembering
I
when
think it
he'd
was
been
supposed to be that he's
in the time
watched
of the
it. Yeah,
dinosaurs.
yeah. When he looks at the this really funny picture of a
Yeah,
diplodocus
they're
skull,
showing him lots of pictures of
and then
dinosaur
that brings him
skeletons.
back.
Just, yeah.
I know, and then it's like a 20-minute like. It was really funny.
It definitely felt like it was padding out. So, I mean, yes, 10 million years ago is approximately 56 years after the dinosaurs, the non-avian dinosaurs died out. But somehow Trog, they know that Trog was around with dinosaurs. That's why I guess they're showing him skeletons of dinosaurs. And this somehow triggers his memories, which we all get a glimpse of, which is lots of some quite nice stop motion animation, kind of Harryhausen style dinosaurs, but also some very rubbery looking puppets in the close up, and some very obvious static models just getting pushed off cliffs, which are clearly only inches high. But yeah, it was just a bit of a, like Josh says, it's super 70s, this film. So 70s
Yes.
from the 70s Y fronts that the cavers like strip down to immediately when they're going through, to Joan Crawford's selection of nylon caving slacks that she wears when she's going caving in this like
with the cute little
immaculately
shoes.
pressed,
Yeah.
just perfect caving outfit. Though, I read after the fact that apparently, because this budget was so low, Joan Crawford provided all her own wardrobe, so those were her own slacks. But she also had, and I thought this was interesting for 1970, she is the chief kind of female scientist of the Brockton Research Centre. She's Dr. Brockton. And she has a dress with pockets, which I thought was quite cool for the 70s.
It's a super cute dress, too. Yeah.
A dress with pockets. I mean, that's something that that everyone's been crying out for.
She probably had it tailored, made for her.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. But the technology was there.
Again, speaking to how low budget the movie is, that dinosaur sequence is clearly just lifted from another movie.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually real Ray Harryhausen dinosaurs, but it's just that the movie was from the 50s, so it was like early animation stuff.
And then they had volcanoes erupting and stuff, and lava flows, and the dinosaurs running from the lava flow, and it looked like it was trying to get onto the idea of like the end of the dinosaurs. Trog witnessed that.
Yeah.
And then got frozen.
Yes, that was the kind of glossed over explanation. There was a lot of glossing over of what the hell actually he was and where he came from, and there's a lot of glossing over in their experiments that they were doing, and how they were, first of all, they were like making him play with dolls. Okay, that's great, that's nice, that's fairly ethical, even though he's like in a cage and shackled up. And then they proceed to perform an operation next door to his filthy cage, where all they seem to be doing is like cutting open a square on his chest and sticking in some kind of radio transmitter.
Giant thing. Yes.
Yeah, it's explained that this is going to help make him talk somehow, and then he proceeds to never talk for the rest of the film, apart from saying
he says her
a couple
name.
of words. He says her name badly.
But I missed that thing was supposed to make him talk. I thought it was supposed to monitor his like vital signs.
Yeah, I think there were two different operations. So there's the first operation where they cut out a perfect square of skin to put in this giant radio transmitter. And then there's a second operation later with the dinosaur dreams where they have electrodes on his head, and then they're showing him videos, still pictures on a TV screen of dinosaur skeletons, which is supposed to teach him how to talk. This is what the experiment is. There's no explanation for how putting electrodes on his head and showing him pictures of dinosaurs is supposed to make him learn how to talk, but it does. The dream sequence comes because he gets sort of worked up and they inject him with sodium pentothal, I guess, as a sedative. And so it's under the effect of sodium pentothal that he has this dream about the dinosaurs, which I don't know if the dream about the dinosaurs was an intentional part of the experiment or if that, again, was just padding the runtime, because it's only an hour and a half long. So if you cut that out, it's already down to an hour and 25 minutes. But the whole concept of, like, I guess similar to a lot of movies we've seen, you know, there's one person who wants to use them for science and there's another person who's scared about, I don't know, bad stuff, or they're just a creationist or whatever. So Joan Crawford's always talking about how important he is for science and how they need to study him, but the scientific experiments that they do don't make any sense. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, why are they doing these experiments? Until you realize she's trying to teach him how to talk so that he can just tell them about dinosaurs. And that's the scientific knowledge they want. They're like, he can just tell us all the stuff.
They want to know what their real names are.
Well, she says she wants to study how human behavior evolves, too. She says that in the courtroom.
Yeah, and I guess she just wants him to tell them, like, just tell us about human behavior 10 million years ago, I guess.
I think we've got to bring up the antagonist character a bit more, who I think is called Murdoch, who's the horrible guy.
He's just an asshole.
He is a total asshole, but he's great. He's like a classic Tory councillor. He's something involved in a kind of middle government of kind of local region. So his only concerns are the taxpayers. That's his kind of mantra about how this is a waste of taxpayers' money, and also how having Trog around is affecting his plans for development of the area where Trog's cave is, and interfering with his plans to build shitloads of houses, which will make him a lot of money. But it's interesting how it kind of taps into, I guess, very 70s fears about feminism and women's liberation. Like his approach to kind of undercutting Dr. Brockton is to find a male scientist that works for her and then kind of take him to the pub, which probably in the 70s Dr. Brockton would not have been allowed to go into. Like a Middle England pub would have been off limits to a woman at those times. And he kind of drips poison in this guy's ear, this scientist called Selburne, about how he must hate having to take orders from a woman, and how he thinks the Brockton Research Centre needs a man in charge, and all this kind of bullshit. And essentially kind of Selburne sort of turns traitor and kind of sells Brockton out in the court case about how he thinks she's wasting everyone's time and money. But I thought that was a fairly interesting kind of sideline in the film about the kind of the tensions that I guess equal rights and having a female boss in the early days of the 70s might have brought about, and making you sympathize with the female doctor character as being, basically undercut by these arsehole male scientists.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, does the movie pass the Bechdel test? We have a strong female lead, and she has, is it her daughter that's her assistant in the lab?
Yeah, Anne is mentioned as her daughter. And yeah, they have conversations that are not about, well, I guess it depends whether you think of Trog as male, which I guess he clearly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more they're talking about science, really, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I think it does pass.
I think it passes. Yeah.
So it's got that going for it, which is nice.
It should definitely pass anyway, just for having a dress with pockets in it, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's true. The costume was probably the worst that we've seen. Because it was just a creepy mask with lots of hair that I think it was supposed to be chest hair, but it was just coming down from the neck and hanging like a curtain.
Like a 70s hairstyle.
Yeah, and then just on a normal man's body. But what I found impressive was like the mask part looked terrible, but when it moved its mouth and its face, it actually moved pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know why that is?
No.
Well, the mask is recycled from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
That's good.
Oh.
Recycling's great.
I don't know why they couldn't have recycled more of the costume. It's just the head and shoulders with a naked man underneath.
But I think the actor playing Trog, did a really good job with what was obviously a really crappy script. He did his absolute best to kind of put some emotion into the role and, at least give it some appearance of depth in terms of its actions and its and it has all the classics, the kind of bent-kneed walk that you have to do if you're a caveman, and kind of random growling just whenever it's a bit quiet. But he does try to do some emoting, so you get an idea that there are some thoughts behind the mask, that there is some kind of living creature behind there. But talking of recycling and much better, more famous films, the arsehole guy Murdoch, the Tory councillor that eventually frees Trog for his final murderous rampage, the actor that plays him is the same actor that plays Alfred the Butler in the Tim Burton Batman films.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's why his face is familiar.
Looks familiar.
But yeah, I mean, like him, I quite liked his final murderous rampage where he throws the greengrocer through his own window and then impales the butcher on his hook. And I was wondering, I don't know if maybe Josh or Kim would be able to answer this, but impaling somebody on a hook is very much a kind of classic horror trope almost. But the first time I remember seeing it is in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think is a later film than this. So, I mean, is it possible that Texas Chainsaw Massacre stole the kind of butcher hook impalement scene from Trog? Because that would be quite interesting, because it's quite terrifying and graphic in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Less so in Trog, but it does still pack a little bit of a punch. It's not something you expect to see in this kind of film.
No, and they do a close-up of him on the hook.
With fantastically lurid coloured blood, that very Hammer horror blood.
The blood is very vibrant.
Yeah. Lots of oxygen.
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen that any earlier than this movie. I can't think of any examples.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something I would have paid attention to, though.
Too busy hiding behind your sofa.
Well, the actual murder was tastefully hidden behind a slab of beef, right? When he actually hangs him on the hook, you don't actually see it.
Yeah, which makes it worse. I think obviously, less is more school of horror. What you can imagine is always worse than what you can see, especially in the 70s.
Yes. I just enjoyed like the little bits of weird moments, like so when he hangs the guy, there's blood on his arm, like the guy squirted blood on his arm, and he looks at the blood, and then he kind of like starts walking slowly out of the butcher shop, and then like looks back at the butcher guy, and then looks at his arm again, kind of annoyed that he got blood on him, and then walks away again. There's just little moments throughout the movie like that you're like, what is that? What does it mean?
Well, the butcher had attacked him with a butcher knife at first, so I assumed that maybe he got cut with the butcher knife, and that's why he hung the butcher on the hook. And then he was looking at his arm covered in blood because it was cut.
Makes more sense.
Again, it felt like we were trying to make him more sympathetic. Like, oh, it was okay that he murdered the butcher because the butcher attacked him first. But of course, the butcher attacked him first because he had just murdered the grocer,
his next door neighbor,
really didn't do anything other than tell him not to steal, right?
Yeah. The one thing that struck me as totally weird is that Trog's, he's nonverbal, he's violent, angry, and yet somehow he's got tailored slippers on all the way through the film. They find him with
and
some
shorts.
And shorts, yeah. They find him with shoes and shorts on. They never think to take them off all the time that they've got him and experimenting on him. They never give him a haircut or a bath or anything like that.
I know. How bad would all of that smell?
He must absolutely reek with 10 million years worth of funk on
There's
him.
also no bathroom in his cage. It's just a small bed of hay.
No.
There's no bathroom or anything.
Yeah. But at least we know it's sterile because they perform surgery right next door. So at least that.
Yeah.
So, as I was trying to figure out the scientific experiments as we're going through, I had a sort of revelation that I write down in my notes here. So at first, they're trying to teach him to play with toys like a child. They're treating him like a child, and she keeps talking about how much science can learn from him, but they're never actually trying to learn anything about him. It seems like they're just trying to make him be like them, right?
Yeah.
It's can he play with toys? Can he learn colors? Can we teach him how to talk? And I realized, oh, this is just colonialism. They don't want to learn from him. They just want to extract resources from him and then make him assimilate into their culture.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is what you'd expect from a movie from the UK in the 70s, I guess, right?
It's very much, I guess, counter-reactionary. And you can see that same sort of theme when they're playing music to him. So they play him classical music, and that seems to soothe him, and that's all lovely and nice. And then play him some hip, groovy 60s tunes, and that sends him into like an absolute rage with some very kind of obvious undertones that, classical music is lovely, the 60s stuff is just noise, the 70s tunes are just garbage. So for a film, it's very much looking to the kind of the past rather than trying to actually do anything good going forward. And she does say at some point that her experiments are something about dragging him into the 20th century. It's sort of said out loud that's her plan. Nothing about learning about his time or about his past, but about bringing him into the modern period.
Also, one of the experiments that they're doing is they're trying to teach him colors, and they're trying to do this before they taught him language. So I'm not sure how they were going to test. They're just showing up like big pieces of paper of a solid color and just saying blue, blue, red, red, colors, right?
Yeah. But he has emotional reactions to green and red.
But I feel like this is a pretty ethnocentric sort of test because color categories are not universal across cultures. Like people divide up the color spectrum in very different ways. So if they haven't even established that he has language, which I think is sort of like, necessary for compartmentalizing the world into different categories, it's not even evident that he's got the capacity to understand the concept of color, let alone the specific colors of the English language as opposed to, colors of any other language, which may not really have anything to do with the colors that we have in English.
I got from that because he was happy with green and got angry with red. And so I wasn't sure what they were trying to get at with that, but I thought maybe it was that he was animalistic again, like green was nature and red made him angry like a bull. I don't know. I don't know what it was.
That's why.
Again, it was just kind of like left open.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's this assumption that our Western emotional associations with color are somehow universal and apply even to, non-humans or early human ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess it shows that he can see in color, at least, if he's having different reactions to different colors. That's something.
That is true, but all catarrhine primates, haplorhine primates can see in color. They have trichromatism, so if they're pretty sure he is a hominin or even an ape, it should pretty much go without saying that he can see in color, I guess, unless he's colorblind.
Yeah, or if there's been, a loss of function mutation or something along his lineage. Yeah. Pretty poor excuse for a scientist, I think. Plus also, there's this gross bit at the beginning where they basically feed him a bucket of buckets and, of fish and lizards, which, great. How on earth they found those under the ground, I have no idea. But the film doesn't even pay attention to its own kind of story. So later on, he's stealing apples and he's eating leaves when he's on the run. So, why are they kind of painting him as this kind of obligate carnivore that only eats gross fish and jelly lizards, and then later on show that he can eat fruit and vegetable matter no problem? It's just it's just crappy writing.
Well, she said he's not a carnivore.
Well, she's feeding him fish and lizards.
Yeah, she said that he's not a carnivore, but that's what he's been eating because he was stuck in the cave, and so they need to adjust his diet to what it should be. I think that's what she said.
All right. Okay, so then maybe the fact that he eats apples or steals apples later on shows that he's done some adjusting to new life.
Yeah.
But they also kind of glossed over his relationship to the cave because they, at first you're like, has this been a whole species that's been living in this cave the whole time? But then it turns out, no, he was just cryogenically frozen like we've seen in Encino Man and Iceman and probably some other movies, right?
Yeah.
Futurama, I guess. But so if he was just frozen and then thawed out and came back to life, like, he's called a troglodyte. Did he permanently live in that cave before he got frozen, or did he just somehow end up in the cave? Like, if the cave is probably not 10 million years old, and, if he got frozen in a glacier 10 million years ago, which I guess there were probably not glaciers in England 10 million years ago, because that's the Miocene, right?
Yeah, it'd been too warm then. In England, anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
they're also actually pretty inconsistent about the date, because she says 10 million, but she also says 1 million, and somebody says like 1,000. Yeah. So it's never really clear exactly how old he's supposed to be.
Well, 65 million at least, I guess.
Yeah, which is never mentioned as an age. I mean, it kind of it kind of shows a lack of respect, I think, for the audience that they're not consistent in these kind of things, because most people know, or maybe I'm being overly generous here, but I think most people know that dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, and so if anything's younger than that, then they're not going to have seen non-avian dinosaurs. So and then to also just not pick a number and stick to it, it's just really sloppy. It feels.
I almost feel like if this movie was sort of like the slasher or monster movie that it was sort of billed as, like, all the way through, and, also being like a campy, low budget movie, I think it could get away with a lot more. Like, if we're just here to see blood and gore, then all the science facts, they could be almost funnier or more interesting if they're wrong. But because the movie spends so much time on, like, talking about science and how important the science is, and depicting him as a sensitive character, I feel like it doesn't get away with as much as it otherwise could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept forgetting it was supposed to be a horror movie until the brutal murder scene.
Yeah, the tone's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of that is the influence of kind of Joan Crawford as a big deal in terms of kind of star power, and trying to make it more than it maybe initially was supposed to be. And she's not very good in this, has to be said. She's not great in this as an actress. Nobody's
She's kind of phoning it in all the way through.
Yeah, nobody's great in it at all. Some are trying more than others. But yeah, I mean, I read that apparently this was like number 1 in the American box office when it was released.
Yeah.
And was a commercial success, given that its budget seems to be about 3 potatoes. But yeah, nobody really particularly comes out of this well. I think that the best actor is the one that plays Murdoch, the tax-obsessed Tory councillor.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, the scene where he's trashing the lab and then casually saunters out and sort of hops over this little stone wall to his car. He almost doesn't say a word, but like that scene was great.
Yeah. That was a highlight. And it's interesting. So he wants to get rid of Trog because he's a monster and he's vicious and violent. And he thinks the best way to do that is to brutally club a security guard to make his point. And then he trashes the lab, which is full of glassware, makes a hell of a noise. Nobody wakes up, though they all live in the Brockton Research Centre. And then when he gets attacked beside his car, and Trog kind of herks him into his car so that he lands on his car horn and sets it off, that wakes everyone up. So there's something off about their sleeping patterns if hearing a whole lab full of chemicals and glassware get wrecked doesn't wake them up, but the horn of a Morris Minor does.
I don't even know if they were asleep yet, though, because if I remember Joan Crawford and the man that was there, weren't they sitting up talking?
Possibly.
I think
I
so.
thought I thought Joan Crawford was in her kind of pastel shaded bedroom and then wakes up when she hears the horn. And maybe
Oh,
Anne and the other guy are awake.
maybe.
Another funny thing is that for a horror movie, all of the murder and all the horror takes place in broad daylight, except for this one scene at night where he's trashing the place. His murderous rampage is in the morning. The shopkeepers are just setting up shop.
Yeah.
And then he goes on a rampage through town in like the broad morning daylight. Seems like it could have been a little scarier if it was a little darker,
Yeah. I mean, possibly
Yeah.
they were going for the contrast because they clearly put up the kind of establishing shots of the village are classic, Middle England thatched roofs and quaint pubs, all that kind of stuff. And to have the horror of Trog appear in such a kind of bucolic little village is maybe the horror angle they were going for, but it doesn't work. It clearly doesn't work.
No. I was wondering if it was just a low budget lighting issue. If they're filming in daylight, they don't need any lighting.
Possibly. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely the kind of scenes within the cave, which are clearly in a studio with these tiny battery powered 70s flashlights, which somehow are
Mhm.
giving out thousands of watts worth of light in the cave. Yeah, lighting might have been the issue.
We were talking about caves last year around this time because I guess we never mentioned,
Yeah.
but we decided to do this one because this is going to start coming out in October, so we're starting to move into some Halloween movies. And last year we did The Descent, which Ross, you missed, but we were talking about caves then. That one depicts caves a lot better because when you get past the entrance of a cave, it gets really, really dark really quick.
Mm.
And yeah, the caves in this movie are extremely well lit.
Because they're made of polystyrene, and quite obviously so. I mean, there's some fantastic scenes where Trog is showing his mighty power by throwing clearly polystyrene rocks at various people and watching them bounce, which is always hilarious.
Yeah, The Descent was a lot scarier, but just as accurate on
Yeah.
the evolution front, I guess.
Except it has real troglodytes because instead of people being thawed out, they had lived in the cave for a million years and had evolved to be cave dwellers.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is initially what I thought they were going to do here, but then they kind of walked that back.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it actually didn't need to be in a cave at all.
No.
They could have just found him frozen like all the other movies.
Yeah.
The other Halloween movie that we watched last year too was the Neanderthal Man, and this is similar to that too, where this prehistoric beast man goes on rampages to kill people.
Yeah.
Well, do we have nothing else to say about this one?
No, I enjoyed it. I think it's worth a silly watch if you're. I mean, but there's probably other movies that are better for your time.
Oh, I think there's definitely other movies that are better.
If you've seen every other movie, this one's not bad.
It's one of the worst.
No, that one that Josh got penalized for, that was the worst.
Yeah. But this is almost up there.
Neandergin.
Yeah, Neandergin is still the
Yeah.
worst. But this is up there. I mean,
You don't think this is getting into so bad it's good territory, though?
I don't think it was exciting
in parts,
enough to be
definitely. In parts, it's definitely campy enough, but there's not enough. I mean, sometimes it takes itself too seriously, not seriously in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way, but seriously as in it thinks it's art, whereas actually it's art with a capital F.
So this movie has a 3.9 on IMDb. I think that might be the worst IMDb rating we've ever seen for a movie.
Let me just... What is Neandergin on it, though? Surely that's got to be...
It is 7.7.
What the...
No,
flip?
yeah, but that's just the one. Remember, because that's the isn't it the maker
Because only
that
one person's watched it.
did the reviews? Yeah,
It's got 33 reviews. 33 obviously is not a lot on IMDb, so I think they're pretty evenly distributed, except that there are a lot of 9s and 10s. So there's
So it's the
15
family of
9s
the
and
producer.
10s. I
Yeah.
think that this is what's happened here.
Yeah.
If only our podcast had a broader reach and we could get our listeners to go and downvote Neander Gins to get
They'd be
that
doing
number to
everyone
an
a favor.
appropriate level.
Yeah, they would be doing the world a favor if they did that.
We'll find out exactly how many listeners we have if we call out our listeners to go rate Neander Gin a 1 or 2 on IMDb and see if we can get that number down from 7.7.
If that's what they think it's worth. Yeah, if that's what they think it's worth. We don't want to... Yeah.
It's not fair to market without watching it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so watch it. It was that one was still free on YouTube, right? That's where we watched it?
No, I paid for that one.
Oh, God.
No, it's not free on YouTube in the Philippines.
Oh, dear.
Is this one worse than Skullduggery?
Yes, I think so. Because Skullduggery was at least trying to do something and say something, just in a very kind of ham-fisted way. This one's... It's in the same kind of ballpark, but it just isn't as good or as entertaining or as campy, really. It doesn't even...
I don't remember Skullduggery at all. What was that about?
The Burt Reynolds one that we watched like 3 weeks ago.
You've repressed it.
The one with the...
yeah, there's nothing in there.
Where they put them to work in the mines, and he has a baby with one.
Oh, yeah, I repressed it.
You repressed that. I'm sorry for bringing it all back up.
Oh, yeah.
What did they call them? They had a nickname for the little people.
Tropies.
Yeah.
Tropies, that's right.
Tropies, yeah.
The tropies. Yeah, let's all agree to forget that one. And this one.
That one was worse than this one.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, we can all agree it's no Encino Man.
No. I don't think we've ever said a movie is an Encino Man, though.
Except Encino Man.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to find another, maybe a real scary one for our 2nd October movie?
That's good.
We'll see what we can come up with and hopefully have some better science and some better horror.
That might be too much to hope for, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe better horror is the thing to aim for.
One or the other.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.